Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. And on this week's episode, Aaron and Kevin are talking about justice. This is a topic that I think everybody wants. Everybody wants fairness and equity. But how do we find that when we approach topics from maybe opposing angles or political spheres? Like, is there any true justice? And what does God have to say about this? What does the Bible have to say? Well, we're going to get into that conversation today. And as always, it's our hope that you'll hear something in this conversation. You'll go start another faithful conversation with somebody else. So, as always, we hope you enjoy this conversation. All right, Kevin, my
Aaron,
friend.
hey, welcome back, buddy.
Thanks.
Welcome back to your couch and your office.
Yeah.
I didn't use it last week though.
You didn't.
So no crumbs.
You and Taylor felt closer to creation in your office, sitting by a window.
That's right. Yeah. Getting those gentle rays basking upon us. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. How was the creation down? You were down in Texas, hey?
Yeah.
I haven't been there for like a decade.
Really?
I went there in college I went through there to Mexico in college, and that's my only time in Texas.
Gotcha. They still think that they're the best.
Good.
And
Good.
No, we did some stuff. Houston's always hot, especially in the summer. And we flew in on a Thursday, and we got there we were supposed to get there like early afternoon, but our flight we were flying out of Minneapolis with my folks and started going down the runway. You get thrown back in your seat, and all of a sudden they let off the accelerator, and I was like, huh. And then they pulled off to the side, and we all kind of looked at each other, and I said to Abby, I was like, maybe you just hit the gas too hard, like trying to get to the jetway,
Sure.
Because, it's like, oh, shoot. Like you hit it at a green light. It's like, oh, you really got into that one. But they came on and said, yeah, we were trying to take off, and we got a warning light came on our dashboard, and we don't mess around with that. So we didn't take off. And I was like, oh.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So we had to go back to the gate, and then they told us we were going to switch planes. But then they said, before we get off the plane, we're going to have maintenance take a look. And so they took a look at it, but it took like 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So we were on it should have been a 2-hour flight. Mm-hmm. And then, so we had to sit there for 2 hours, and with a 2-year-old on a plane, like that was a lot of fun.
Oh, no.
He wasn't upset. It's just a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
But then they told us that we could take off, and they were talking to each other and the other passengers, and it's like, huh. Do you feel safer like on a plane that they say that we can take off in that, had some emergency light and now it's okay, supposedly? Or
this is like the whole, what do they say? What, ignorance is bliss?
Yeah.
This is exactly why they say that. It's like, I don't want to know about the instrument panel.
I know.
But there's danger involved in this process.
Yeah. So we stayed on the plane and made it to Texas. But then, so we landed late afternoon. We got to my brother's house and we were hanging out and cooking dinner. And then all of a sudden, it just started storming like crazy. Really? And then the winds were just whipping through their neighborhood, and the power went out. And that was Thursday at dinner time, and they were out of power Friday and all day Saturday until Saturday at midnight. And the power came back on. So, during Hurricane Harvey, which was a couple of years ago, it was a big hurricane. My brother bought a generator, so we actually ran the generator and stuff. But it was like, so when the storm first went through, you could pull up online, to see where the power outage was, like on a phone, and there were hundreds of thousands of people, and then like by the end, it was like 1,000 or 2,000 people, and it was all just in my brother's neighborhood. But we drove around, and there were massive trees like just on people's houses and like down power lines and stuff. So
yeah,
something went right through their neighborhood and knocked stuff out. But
holy smokes!
Anyways, so we experienced it was a little adventure.
Yeah, that's an exciting first couple days there.
Yeah, but then we were there for my brother's graduation. He graduated with a master's degree, and so we did that, and then did a little family vacation at a rental house in Austin. And Austin's a cool city. I mean, we didn't really go into the city, but it's Houston's super flat and stuff. Austin is really hilly. I don't know. So they call it the hill country. And so, yeah, we were on this rental or this this house on top of a cliff, like overlooking a valley and stuff with a pool. And
was the sky huge at night?
It was big and bright.
Nice.
Deep in the heart of Texas.
Nice.
You know that song?
I only know the SpongeBob parody of it.
Oh, really?
Which is what just played in my head.
Yeah.
I hear everything's bigger in Texas.
Well, we went to Buc-ee's.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of Buc-ee's?
I have heard of Buc-ee's, but I don't really know much about it.
I had never been, but...
like barbecue / Walmart on steroids or something?
Yeah, gas station.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Just giant gas station with touristy stuff. And supposedly, no, not supposedly, it's actually happening. They're crossing the Mason-Dixon line and building some massive, like 70-acre thing near Madison coming up. Madison, Wisconsin.
No kidding.
Look out for that coming up soon. Buc-ee's.
Yeah, watch out.
Taking over the north.
Watch out, Texas. Everything's bigger in Madison now.
There you go.
Well, cool. Yeah.
So, it was good. It was good. But it was kind of interesting though. You know, I mean, you guys talked about creation last week. That's not the theme for today, but like being in the suburbs and stuff. Once again, I was driving around with my brother, and we were just running some errands, and on the way back to his house, he's like, let's go this other way. I like going this other way. And so it just skirted around the neighborhood, and it's a road just lined with trees and stuff, which is, it's just funny that we take this stuff for granted. And he's like, I just like going this way better than through the industrial, you know. I was like, you got a hankering for some trees every once in a while. He's like, oh man. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting, you know, like how there's this, I mean, I don't know if it's in everybody, but
yeah, there's some people that don't like, you know, bugs and trees and things.
But I think there's a longing, you know, for it. But you know, we grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota, so the woods and the water that's in the heart. But
yeah, I think so though. I think so.
Yeah. But I listened to your sermon.
Ooh, all right.
Hope for justice.
Justice, my friend. You ever watch a Justice League?
No.
Neither did I. I'm not really into superheroes.
For our listeners here, though, Kevin and I play this game where he names a movie or a show, and he says, "Hey, Aaron, have you seen this?" And like 9.5 times out of 10, I say no.
It's like fishing for me, except I'm better at this game at getting a bite. Oh, wait, guys. Thanks. Yeah, no, Justice League. No, but Justice, yeah. So it was on Justice, which I think is a topic that, I mean, it's kind of funny thing about the Justice League, because I guess it's a topic that resonates, you know, throughout humanity, kind of regardless of age, location, you know, what you're doing in your life. Like, we all care about justice. I witness it at my house all of the time, because I witness all these little injustices, you know, going on between my two kids. So this has been the big one lately. This is Lily's defense for every time I hear Will cry, you know, and I look over and I go, okay, what's going on? And this is what she'll say. I promise you, I had it first. And Will is trying to steal it from me, you know. And so that's her defense, that she feels like she has been, you know, wronged. Yeah. And Will's just like, dude, I'm just trying to play. I'm a baby. I'm just trying to play with you, man. But so even kids, you know, like even kids, when they feel like something, when they feel like they've been wrong, there's a sense of justice that comes out, and I think it comes out in all of us.
Yeah, we desire fairness and equity. Oh, absolutely. My kids do that stuff all the time. I mean, everything is about trying to, you know, make it equal. I mean, at dinner last night, it was, you know, we were having a salad and there were cherry tomatoes, and it was, I forget, there were however many were left, and it was like, well, they got an extra one than I, you know, and like, I mean, all the time, constant. So yeah, that's definitely deep within us. You know, you handled the topic well, in your preaching, because it, like, I just get really frustrated how quickly people try to pigeonhole you into some sort of like a political camp based on your view of how the world is going or whatever. And at least the way I heard you preaching on this topic was this is a Christian concern. This is a godly concern. Mm-hmm. This is, it's not, if you, I don't know, man. Well, I'll even very clearly in your sermon, like you talked about, you talked about Michael Brown
yep.
in Ferguson. Man, I remember that very clearly too. How he was killed, and then even in your sermon, like you used the word protest, that the people were protesting.
Yep.
Somebody could come to you, and I know this happens, and I don't know if it happened, but where, somebody might say they weren't protesting, they were rioting. You used the wrong word, and all of a sudden we're in this, now we're on two, we got these two different viewpoints on the same issue, right. Where it's like, well, no, the people who felt like they were in, what would the word be? They felt the injustice.
Yeah.
Felt they were protesting, but then the people who are, whose businesses are being victimized or whatever might look at that and say, well, no, they're rioting. And so, but to have an appropriate understanding of this, like, how can you be, we got to be able to be sympathetic to both sides of the coin,
Right.
But so often it's like, no, you said protest. It was actually a riot. Therefore, you're wrong. Therefore, you must be, sympathizing with them, and you don't actually believe that, whatever. And it's just like, oh man.
Well, that's what I do. That's what I love. I mean, honestly, I love this about the gospel is that it subverts all cultures. It subverts all ideologies. So it's helpful, when we come to worship and come to the scriptures, and you've made this, I like this idea where it's like, I don't look at the Bible through what I'm not bringing a lens when I come to the Bible. I'm not bringing my worldly lens. I'm not bringing my political lens into, the Bible as I read it and kind of projecting my views onto it. No. I take the Bible and I let that inform my views.
Yeah.
And it's so helpful because the Bible, it's actually kind of surprising as you read about the justice of God in the scriptures because it's so nuanced and balanced. Yeah. I mean, it's been more striking to me, to discover, like, really the way God consistently does care for and advocate for the needy, the oppressed. I mean, if you read the Psalms, you'll read those words over and over. And so he's got this heart for them, but at the same time, it's not, God isn't, like people they're always like worried about handouts.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, I mean, in some sense, grace is a handout,
Yeah. But everybody gets the same.
But I mean, they're not deserving of it, and they get it.
Yeah.
As Christians, we got to be like, yes, this is great. But even God, it's not like Jesus is just like, yeah, so do whatever you want. Right. And God's not just like, yeah, it doesn't matter what you do, and here's everything so you can be happy or something,
Right. And he also doesn't say that that grace is like a governmental operating system,
Right. Yeah.
And so like there's
two kingdoms theology.
Yeah.
I mean, this is getting a little in the weeds if you're not a pastor, but maybe you've heard of two kingdoms theology though, if you're listening, and that just the idea is there is a difference between how the state runs and how the church runs very clearly, actually, in lots of ways.
And that God is Lord over all of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's nuanced and complex. Well, I'm glad it came across, hopefully if it came across to you as at least fair and balanced and scripturally. I mean, that's my big piece is I just want it to be, scripturally accurate and.
Yeah. Well, it's so, I mean, man, it's so hard. Like the Bible is very, very clear that God cares for the lost, the least, the lowly, the oppressed, the brokenhearted. I mean, he cares for all these, for the weak, for the widow, all these people. And oftentimes it's the people who are in power, who are arrogant and lofty and, need to be humbled. And that seems to be a pretty consistent storyline. But at the same time, like in a broken world, there are also poor people who are prideful and sinful and arrogant. And you know,
yes, Luther's his explanation of the first commandment's really good on that one, because he talks about, you know, okay, we're talking about gods, and you know, what's your god, and he talks about mammon, you know, money and possessions being the most common false god on earth, right? But he says it's not just the rich who are idolizing this. He says, go listen to the poor, hear what they have to say. And they say things like, if I had what you had, you know, I would be this, that, the other way.
Yeah. And I mean, in my ministry, I've been able to work with a lot of poor people. And I mean, where I was doing it a lot, like every day, was when I was in Denver on my vicarage. And it was like super hands-on. It was like mostly what I did was like homeless ministry. Some incredible people, some really incredible people, like incredibly humble, generous people who had absolutely nothing. And then, you know, the man that I worked with that really mentored me in understanding this world, you know, we'd be walking along the streets, like serving food to people, and he would know these other guys, like sitting in a wheelchair holding a cardboard sign on the side of the street, and he knew that guy can get up and walk. And he was like, that guy actually makes more money than you know? And it's like, so, but that doesn't mean that every poor person is that, you know? And so like, I think that's where we need to be able to have a even keel, you know? In our understanding of the way that God operates. Like, we need to be wise and discerning, and grace filled, you know? So, just because you see, you know, even the person who's panhandling, it's like, well, there's something, there's brokenness there too, you know, for the reason that they would actually be doing that, and, you know, essentially lying and, you know, robbing people. And it's like, well, okay.
Which brings in, you know, the other aspect of God's justice as well, right? Like, so if someone is doing that, it's not as if God doesn't know, you know?
Right.
And it might not be my job, you know, per se, or at least I mean, if you work in it long enough, it sounds like you can, you know, you start to get to know people, and then you can build that discernment. But it's not like that means we have to go out and sort of like, let me vet, you know, every person I encounter, and make sure I'm not getting cheated. It's like, well, you know, if that's between you and God, right? At that point.
Well, that's where I prefer to start with, start from grace, and, you know, and work from there. It's like, God can handle it. Like, especially in my working with people, like, God is ultimately just, right? And God is ultimately the judge. And so I can't judge somebody's heart. Right. But I can, you know, we do these kinds of things too. Like even at our church here. Sorry. I want to move beyond just talking about the poor, because justice is bigger than just that. But like even at our church here, like, we'll have people stop in and ask for, you know, help with gas or food or whatever it might be. And when we do that, when we help those people, we don't hand out cash to them. We will, like, if they say, hey, I need gas, like, we'll say, well, I'll meet you at the gas station and fill up your tank, you know. And we don't ask a ton of questions on that. We try to build a little bit of rapport and relationship, but it's not like we're not going to go through a whole vetting thing. It's like, well, listen, they said they need some gas. Let's give them some gas. Their tank was empty. Well, I guess they needed some gas, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, and I think the key word there too is relationship, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's, we use a model at our church when we think of how we're helping the community of good, better, best, you know, and that helps, I think, orient us as well, where it's like, God is calling us into relationship with people. And so if there is, you know, like when I lived in St. Louis, I actually would, this is when I first moved there, but when I started seminary, I'd pass this one corner every day, and I would see the same homeless fellow, right? Well, over time, it's like, okay, well, maybe I will look at you. Oh, maybe I will wave. Oh, here, I have food today. Like, come over, have some, you know? Like, oh, what's your name, right? And I think that is, well, and you could probably speak better to it just from your time in Denver, but I think there's something more transformational about building the relationship, you know, with the poor. And that's kind of what the scriptures were calling for too, in all of these categories, right?
Oh, Absolutely. Transformational for me also.
Yeah,
Like,
right. Exactly.
I mean, that's like, this is how, even for me, like, this is one of the big reasons I wanted to be a pastor, or I felt God like calling that into me, was when I was in junior high and high school. We would go on mission trips to a Native American reservation in northern Minnesota, and it was in that place where I actually saw like extreme poverty that I'd never seen before, you know, just like, I don't know, I saw it in terms of like blight in people's yards and just trash and, you know, lack of cleanliness on children and those kinds of things. And I just remember my heart just breaking, you know, for people that are broken. And I think that's the way of Jesus, you know. I mean, those are the stories of, I mean, that's the Good Samaritan, right? Who has compassion, his guts move, you know, for the man who's broken and beaten and bloodied and dying on the side of the road. When the good church workers, the priest and the Levite, walked by on the other side of the road, you know, it's like, yeah, those things, if it doesn't, I don't know. I think so many people live life with blinders on, you know, and just like, oh, that's something ugly, or potentially even ugly over there. And I don't want to see that.
Exactly. I mean, that was, that was for a long time my experience. Anytime I passed someone with a sign up, you know, on a street, which you do a lot in St. Louis, you know, and finally I was like, no, I don't want to avoid that. I want to actually have eye contact, you know, with people. I don't want to be blind to these things.
There's when we started that ministry in Denver, that was, again, the man that mentored me, that was he had a regular job, and he would drive up and down the street in Colfax Avenue. You knew Colfax, living in Denver. Yep. It's got a reputation. And he would drive it to get home from work and get to work. And he would just, after a while, I was like, I can't just keep driving by these people. Like, I got to do something about it. And once we started that ministry, there was a song that we would sing, a song by Brandon Heath called "Give Me Your Eyes."
Oh yeah,
you know?
I remember that one.
Give me your eyes for just 1 second. Give me your eyes so I can see everything that I've been missing. Give me your love for everything, or something like that. But it's just that, like, God sees.
Yeah. God hears. God's not closing his eyes.
No, and I don't know. You know, we're all wired a little bit differently, but I believe, like, for me, God put that kind of wiring into me when I think when I was young. Like, I've always just had a desire to see the people that nobody wants to see. Like, one of my best friends throughout high school was a kid that nobody wanted to sit by in junior high, you know, and he would always like go and sit by himself. And it was just like, I wanted to notice that kid, you know? And so I did, and he was one of my best friends, you know? And so, like, I always try to be on the lookout for the people who are off by themselves, or who it seems like people are just passing by as much as possible. But it's so hard. Like, even in my life, you know, it's like, I got a job, I got a wife, I got 4 kids, I got all this other stuff. It's like, it's really easy to just be like, oh, I don't know, I'll do that kind of stuff at some other point in life. I'll help people out. You know, it's like, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough to live, you know, like, but I think that God will, you know, visit you and visit us, right? With opportunities. And it might not be every single day, might not be every week, might not be every month. I mean, when I read the Bible, you know, it's always like, and it came to pass, you know, and it's like been 7 years, and now finally something's happening, you know. So maybe we're helping the poor out more than once every 7 years. That's not the point of this. But what I'm trying to say is, if you find yourself in a situation that does strike you, pay attention to it. You know, if you happen to bump into somebody who is in need, and you have the means to provide their need, to meet their need, pay attention to it. I don't really believe in coincidences, you know, and it can look like a lot of different ways. It could look like, because even talking about sitting by someone who has been pushed to the side or pushed to the margins,
you might not read the scriptures and think, oh, he fits into this category that, we're talking about with justice. But no, actually he kind of does, because we're talking about those who are pushed to the margins. Like God has a heart for those who are not looked upon, who are not praised, who are not receiving maybe the cultural good. So it could be that. It could be, if someone, I mean, in our town we have people from other countries who sometimes need help getting to and from, or just making their way around. And it's really easy to have someone like that. Like, I can at least imagine being busy on a day and having a person who doesn't know their way around, or maybe is even in my way. I'm trying to get something done and this person's in my way, and it's like, why don't you go back to your own country? Right? Yeah. Oh, well, maybe God has placed that person in your path so you could interact with them, so they could intersect you. Yeah, actually.
Well, yeah. And that's, when we do discipleship with people, with in our church, and not just within our church, but when we're using like discipleship language and talking about like key characteristics that a disciple of Jesus has. So if you want to be a real like true follower of Jesus, one of the first like key characteristics you have to embody is spiritual brokenness.
Blessed are the poor in spirit.
Yeah. So like, to acknowledge the fact that I am nobody. I'm nobody without Jesus. Like, without him, I'm a mess. I'm condemned. I'm dead.
Yeah. Like when you see those kids in that native village and they're dirty and there's trash everywhere, it's like, this is my spiritual condition.
Yeah.
This is me before God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like at one point in my life it was like that, and now I'm so much better. It's like, no, if I'm taking an honest look at it on a daily basis, I daily have to die.
Yes.
I daily have to die. This is what baptism does. We believe in a Lutheran context we have a daily drowning to sin and a rising to new life in Christ, united with Jesus in his death and his resurrection. Yep. So by daily like contrition and forgiveness, we receive that new life in Jesus. And so like we have to constantly come to the cross of Jesus and find ourselves needy.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, I mean, it transforms you. Like, no longer do you operate by the status structure that the world does operate by. Right. I mean, there really are levels. I mean, we don't have a caste system in our culture, but there's a invisible one that people do operate by, whether you're in high school or at your job or larger, just in the country. But the gospel totally blows that up. It erodes it. Right. Because it's like, I'm not up there. Like, I was down there. Yeah. Like, wait, and Jesus came down and picked me up. And so it's like, now I can relate to anybody.
Yeah. 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 I mean, and it's, we have to do that because like I was on vacation. My mom was reading a book about, it was a woman chemist, let's say, I don't know, in the 1950s or 60s, who was making inroads as a woman scientist.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And it was a field of men, and they were the ones that were. If you can hear my phone ringing on this podcast,
if that's you calling in right now to get us off the air.
Or maybe it's a caller. We have a live. Maybe we're live and we got a caller. And you probably actually didn't even hear the phone ringing through these microphones, but we did. So we're going to keep going. And I'm going to tell you that my mom was reading a book about this, this female who was making inroads. And so we just had a brief conversation saying, like, we were just talking about about injustice, basically. And that I think we all do have these built-in prejudices, Yeah. And this is one of those areas where you can get pigeonholed as in some sort of political movement, and say like, well, you're born a white man in America, therefore you're, naturally racist. And it's like, I I don't know if we can go that far, but I can say that I do. I mean, everybody has natural prejudices.
Right, exactly. And biases might be
yeah.
It's like I'm biased towards people who look like me and act like me. That makes me feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's like it feels riskier to go outside those bounds of that. So of course I'm going to likely, unthinkingly, and I think that's the part, like you get some voices out there that want to make it sound like it's a really intentional malevolent thing that's going on, but I think it's way more subtle. I'm not saying it's not true, but that's the sinful nature is subtle.
But
Old Adam, I mean, sometimes it's very obvious and stark, but it can be really subtle. And I think you're right. And well, you can go on about the book, because I think it's those kinds of findings that sometimes expose to us, again, those blinders we had on, we really didn't want to see. But it's like, look.
But then, see, I think what happens is, like, what happens in the world that desires justice, but it tries to find it apart from Jesus, says, okay, so you have an implicit, bias, and because of who you are, what group you belong to, just because of where you were born and how you were born, therefore the sins of the past from your people, you need to feel what it felt like. And so if you were on top and I was on bottom, now I get to be on top and you need to go to the bottom. And then we'll do that for a while, and then it will equal out.
Right.
And it's like, oh man, like, how do you, like, I think that's the way the world like seeks justice. That's the way that my kids tried to do it when they're fighting over the tomatoes. Or your kids are just tugging on that toy till somebody relents and lets go, and one is upset and the other's happy. Like, man, that's not, see, that's where grace is. Grace, the fullest sense of what grace is, can only be given by Jesus. And that is what is transformative. But here's the thing: God is both perfectly grace-filled, or you could say perfectly merciful. He is totally merciful, and he's totally just at the same time. And you can't have one without the other. You recognize that? Like,
like if there's no justice, there's no such thing as mercy, because you can't like give. There's no infraction possible.
Right. And if there's no mercy, then true justice isn't true justice. Actually, so you have to have these things have to be held in tension, and that's why it's so nuanced, And that's why, like, a relational aspect to actually, like, understanding people and dealing with people and being filled with grace and compassion and humility and finding yourself at the foot of the cross and needy and desperate without Jesus changes your viewpoint of, the problems of sin and humanity and
and what what is our role? What do we do about it? And I think it's good too, just to be honest to ourselves as well about, like, this is complex. It is nuanced. Like, this isn't easy, and especially not easy when we start to confront the biases that we actually carry, or the ways that we maybe have contributed, to injustice. Like, it's never easy to admit sin. But Jesus wants us, for our sake and for the sake of the world, to see with his eyes, do the Brandon Heath thing. Because, and this is why I also think Christianity is so, it has the power and potential to stand out in a very kind of amazing ways, because it's so counterintuitive. Everybody else wants to handle the justice. And of course you got to have law and order, and we have people to do that, but like every person wants to say this is what should be happening, and get their word in. And Paul says, no. God's going to do it. God is he is just, and if the hammer's going to come down, that his hammer is going to be the big one that comes down, let him do it. You don't need to. I don't need to. The truth will be vindicated. I don't need to be so, bent on this or that conclusion happening with something, because God is actually going to bring all things to bear in the end in a just way. And instead, we get the chance to offer to others what has been offered to us, which is the grace.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think, like, just like you did with last week with Taylor and talking about like caring for the creation. there are little simple things that we can do on a daily basis. Same thing goes for justice. Like,
yep.
You know, I might not be Martin Luther King Jr., you know, but I can notice somebody who's sitting at the lunch table by themselves and go sit by them and befriend them.
Yep.
You could actually like get to know somebody who's poor or homeless.
Yeah.
You know, you could actually, I mean, there are community centers, there are low income housing places. You can get to know people.
Yep.
You know, like, I think if you don't have friends that are, you know, in a different socioeconomic bracket than you, or people that you can call by name, and that, like, I don't know, just consider some of those things.
Yeah,
like,
challenge yourself maybe.
Yeah,
and just be
or even cross culturally. You know, it's the same thing. Like, look out for the foreigners among us. You know, I mean, it's like,
yeah, right. David Kim, that always struck me when he was here, talked about how I think he said 98% of international students never are invited into the home of, you know, a resident of America, you know, and we're not a hospitality culture. Like a lot of other cultures are really hospitality oriented, but we're not, we're really individualized.
Yeah.
So even that, that's a great one. You know, just say, hey, we'd love to have you for dinner. That would actually be a huge thing for that.
Them. And if you want, this podcast drops on what?
Wednesday,
June
21st.
That it? Wednesday, June 21st, this podcast drops. 1 week from today, Wednesday, June 28th, we actually have a cross-cultural event at the Daniel Heights apartment complex, where we'll be grilling food and inviting the neighbors to come out and play games and hang out and stuff. So
build relationship.
If you want to do that, go do that. So
awesome, man.
All right, man. Kevin, it's always been good to sit with you and bear some leg.
It's nothing I do. Obviously, not very much. I'm very pasty.
Yeah, and I've been at the pool all week, so, you know. Hey, cheers buddy.